It was the doctor's duty to inspect all of the courtiers for suspicious pock marks or a nasty cough, and if they were found to be sick, they were expelled from the court. No excuses. This applied even to the most important people.
The thing that I really like in the accounts of him is the way that they often go on about what good legs he had. It's the calf of his leg that several of the ambassadors actually comment upon.
In Tudor times, a man's beauty is measured, among other things, by the shape of his legs. Calves are a symbol of Tudor manhood, and Henry works his assets to his advantage.
Henry rules at a time when the image of the king sets the tone for the whole nation. The Tudors were as image-conscious as we are today. There was no better way for Henry to show off his strength and manhood than by competing in public sports displays.
In archery, in wrestling, in joust, Henry was a match for the best in his kingdom. None could draw the bow, tame the steed, or shiver a lance more deftly than he.
Jousting is the perfect way for Henry to show off both his own strength and England's power. But it's a dangerous sport, and Henry puts his life on the line.
The first of the really nasty jousting accidents we hear about was in 1524. And what happened was that he forgot to put the visor down on his helmet. Everyone was shouting, "Put your visor down!" But he thought they were just cheering him on. So out he went, he charged his opponent, and the lance hit him just here over the right eye. It's a really nasty knock. And from this point on, we start to hear that he suffers from these horrific, really bad migraine headaches.
Henry is extremely lucky. He could have lost his eye or been killed altogether. The resulting migraines torture Henry for the rest of his life. Henry is also an avid player of royal tennis, a mix of squash and court tennis. It's a very strenuous sport. Henry builds one of the first royal tennis courts in England at one of his favorite palaces, Hampton Court. Like any modern-day athlete, Henry is plagued by sports injuries. His first tennis injury is a wrenched foot.
One accident we hear about happened during a game of tennis in 1527. He wrenched his foot, and it must have been pretty bad because for several weeks afterwards he had to wear a black velvet slipper instead of a normal shoe. And what happened was that all the other courtiers started wearing slippers as well in sympathy for the king. Tudor medicine is still based on the ideas of the Roman physician Galen. He said that the body's made up of 4 different tumours, and if these get out of balance with each other, it can cause illness. So Tudor doctors are very keen on investigating the fluids that come out of the body, like Henry VIII's spit, also his urine, also his stools. They spend a lot of their time actually looking into the toilet to see what the king has produced. Tudor doctors are even encouraged to taste urine to see if they can work out what's wrong with somebody. It must have been a really, really horrible job.
The team turns to Henry's poor reproductive record.
So this is Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife, and this here is her childbirth record. It's really pretty sad. We know about 7 pregnancies. The first one in 1510 was stillborn. The next one dies. The one after that is premature. Another stillborn baby. Then there's a live birth. This is Princess Mary, who survives. But after that, another miscarriage, and then a baby girl who died young. What could have caused that?
Well, it's really difficult because in Tudor times, antenatal care wouldn't have been that great, even for someone of the royal household. But the thing that strikes me is she was able to get pregnant. So, you know, fertility was not her problem. Syphilis is an infection that can cause problems around childbirth, and if the infection gets passed from the mother to the child, it can cause stillbirth, it can cause premature birth, and it can cause early infant death.
One of the things that amuses me about him in this period is just how much attention is given to his manhood. That is a ridiculously big codpiece.
That's just propaganda, both personal and national propaganda. The Tudors invented propaganda. It's all about creation of this powerful nation state off the coast of Europe.
The codpiece can't hide the fact that time is running out for Henry and his first wife, Catherine. Henry wants a new wife who will bear him a male heir. But first, he needs a divorce.
Henry came up with a radical solution to get the divorce that he wanted without having to ask the Pope for permission. He made himself the head of his own church, granted himself the divorce that he needed to marry wife number 2, Anne Boleyn.
Henry's team of doctors, now numbering 15 royal physicians, struggles to find the cures for their increasingly impatient patient.
The other thing that must have been really difficult as Henry's doctor was running the risk of committing treason. Because if anybody said that the king was going to die, to predict the king's death was a treasonable act and you'd be punished for that. So as a doctor, you've got to be very careful. It means you can't tell the truth.
How much did Henry eat?
I'm here to do Henry's weekly shop. So he had 13 dishes a day, and one of those was often a pork dish. 7 days a week, that's a lot of pork, that is.
Henry's diet consists mainly of meat dishes. He eats everything from pork, lamb, chicken, and beef, to game, rabbit, and a variety of birds like peacock and swan.
So, we're not getting any water because that's unsafe to drink, but the Tudors got around this by drinking an awful lot of ale. 10 pints a day, we think, for Henry VIII, so we need 70 pints. "70 pints of ale, but that's not all. Okay, red wine, we need lots of this. Henry's red wine would have been quite sharp. We probably wouldn't have liked it very much, but he didn't mind it being sharp because he drank it with sugar in it. And this is the absolute staple of the Tudor diet, bread. And in Henry VIII's case, white bread. Not good for his constipation.
It's been calculated that Henry eats 5,000 calories a day, twice the recommended intake for a man today.
So what's the damage?
£484.
Wow, that's quite a bit. That's just one man's food. And most families today are spending about £150 on a week's food.
There we are.
So what can we see here then, apart from this nice thick layer of fat?
Well, there is indeed a huge layer of subcutaneous fat here. But what really strikes me is how the heart is having to work very hard here. It's actually working quite fast. And because he had high blood pressure and poor circulation, and because he was so big, the heart would have become quite enlarged, particularly on the left side, which is the part that pumps the blood around the body. And also it's having to go quite fast to make sure that the blood gets to the extremities.
What's that? Is that his liver?
That is his liver, and it's looking a little bit fatty, as you might expect from his diet and also his alcohol consumption.
Catherine, for me, there's loads of evidence that Henry VIII suffered from diabetes. What do you think?
And you're absolutely right. If he were to walk into my clinic today, I'd want to test his blood sugar, which is something, unfortunately, the Tudors couldn't do. He has all the classic appearance of a late-onset diabetic. He's obese, he's got chronic leg ulcers, he's got poor eyesight, he's got terrible circulation and high blood pressure.
The Tudor diet at court, a lot of meat, not many vegetables, a lot of sugar. This is probably something that I think he brought on to himself. Do you agree?
Well, you're right. These days, we would always advise a diabetic to cut sugar out of their diet, because one of the problems with diabetes is your body can no longer use glucose very well, and so you have to cut way back. But that would have been incredibly difficult for him to do in Tudor times. And so an awful lot of his problems could well have been caused by the diabetes.
Well, I'm convinced. For me, it's diabetes, case closed.
7.
The investigation is complete, but its conclusion is somewhat tragic.